Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, here to talk round 16 team discussion and trade options this week, in particular for Tom Stewart, which seems to be all the buzz after his suspension for his hit on Prestia. So we'll get straight into it. As always, check us out on all our social media platforms, the YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Twitter. Supercoach Insider 100 for all the boys, Swiz 26 for me. YouTube in particular, search there. We love the comments and the feedback, so yeah, please keep sourcing us out, and we really appreciate all the support. And again, for our sponsors, Splash Vodka, Earn You, and Manscaped, we really appreciate everything you guys do for us. On to my team, 2583 was my score last week, which was for the round 800th overall. My season rank went up 610 spots to 935, so I'm closing in on Benny Boy there. I think I'm about 200 points behind him, maybe a little bit less now. So, yeah, I think it was about 13,500 8 weeks or 9 weeks ago. So, yeah, those buy rounds really helped, and it continued on last week, which was obviously a very good week. Probably the only thing there was, I think, my VC and C. I ended up costing myself. It was probably, it could have been up to 40 points or 38 points if I went Stewart. I know I had a couple of friends who were trying to convince me to go Stewart as the captain and that. But yeah, I was more than happy to take McRae's score. Kind of played it safe there with the 123. I left the Brisbane Melbourne game alone, and Oliver's 140. Even then, another 17 points would have been happy. But yeah, that's the way it goes. Starting straight off there with the VC and captain options. I know I said this with Benny Boy. Tonight's game is a very obvious one for a lot of people because McRae is playing Neil. McRae is as safe as houses. We do expect him to go somewhere between 120 and 140. So that's not a bad and VC, and it's pretty safe for people to go with. That's probably how I've been playing most of the year, but I'm going to throw the risk and reward this week. I really want Clary more as the VC, but possibly definitely as captain. He had that one low game against the Crows, but his 2 games before that both were double tons. His projection is 190. There is a possibility that lead could be out as well, which means there's more points in that midfield. So everything points to Oliver having a massive game. Just signed up till 2030. So congratulations to the Ds. I think they got Petrarca to 2029 and Dan Oliver to 2030. So that's 2 of their big names. Just Jackson to go, who probably seems more out than in, but obviously they'll be the player they'll be working on next. So I really do want Oliver as captain. My worry with possibly a McRae getting like a 130, 135 is the score that you've got to take. And then what if Oliver just goes ham? More leaning towards Mills if I want the VC before Oliver, just because he's got the potential to go massive against the Bombers. I do think Parrish should be back this week, but Mills has had a couple massive games this year, the 160 odd, and was it the 212, I think, off the top of my head, down at against Hawthorn at Launceston this year. So 214, my mistake here, but the last game he played against the Bombers, 167, also has a 147 to his name against Geelong, so he does have the potential to go huge, and that's kind of what I want with my VC, is something massive which makes me not want to take Oliver. And usually 130 to 140 would be massive, but in this case I'm looking for 150 above, and then I'm happy to roll the dice there. But I know a lot of people are going to have Oliver as their VC or their C, and there's a real hurt factor. He just loves playing the Crows. The Crows could put some time and effort into him, but we'll kind of see with that. And then I know a few people, because Freo are playing Port, and Port's ruck stocks have been a bit weakened over a few weeks now, that they're going Darcy. Witts versus Cameron's not a bad option, and I think a few people are looking at the safety option of Took as the captain, kind of for that 110 backup. It's one of those things, like, do you risk 20 to possibly 30 points, maybe going McRae's 130 to 140 if that's what he ends up getting, instead of going a Took? Or do you and have to end up going a Took, for example, and you say he gets like a 110, 120, you cost yourself 20 points, but then there's a potential here if you go a McRae and you get a 140, which could be fantastic, and Oliver comes out in double tons, which is not without a possibility this week. You could be 50, 60 points behind overall and in your league matchup. So very interesting how people are going to play this, and I think this is going to be a discussion when we come back next week and go, oh, yeah, it was just so obvious and whatnot. But, yeah, I think that's one that's going to really decide some matchups this week. Now, on to Stewart is the big out, but there's still some questions about ins and outs this week. So we know English isn't playing. Caleb Daniels out, but now for 4 weeks. So that will right into this Stewart chat. Parrish is meant to be back in, but there are some question marks over some massive players this week. So Laird, Cripps, Jackson, Brody, Butters, and Bruce, all massive question marks if they're going to play or not. Usually I try to do these team discussions when the teams come out, so we can have a bit more proper data around them. I'm expecting some of these players to be named, but there'll be a watch all the way up to the game. So in particular, Laird, Cripps, Jackson, and Brody, definitely keep an eye out if there's some late changes there. So apologies, it's just not coming to you later than I normally would, but I'm off to a some sort of candlelight dinner or something with the wife tonight, so that's why I'm coming to that. So I'll be kind of checking my phone for the footy, but yeah, that's why I've come a little bit earlier than the normal Thursday evening. All right, Stewart. So that's the big discussion with everybody. Now, if it's a straight out, you just want the one trade in and out. Dawson's your man if you've got the money. It's 31k to go up to Dawson. Sicily, if you don't have him, is 37k, but I think Dawson's the best of those big options. And then Doherty's the third, which is 14k, which I know a few people had that sort of money left over. You try not to burn 2 trades unless you're in that situation where you have stacks of trades, and we're talking about more than 8. Yeah, you could go 2 players out. But yeah, you're trying to do this in one trade. So if you've got the cash, Dawson 1, Sick Dog 2, Doherty 3. If you don't have the cash, then you're down and not many trades like myself, who's I think a lot of my 4 trades, a few people in that sort of situation, 3, 4, 5 trades. Yeah, you're looking at a cheaper option. So I've sort of broken these up into different categories, and this is where it not just comes on the Stewart chat here and how much money you might not have, but it also comes down to what you want to do with the rest of your team. So some people like myself are looking at getting Hobbs or Roses up. For me, it's Roses. For others, it's Hobbs. Roses is currently at 272. Hobbs is at 333. Now I've got 132k in the bank. So different people will have different amounts. So how much money you can save going Stewart down and how far down you're willing to go all comes into a discussion here. So the next group, I've got Rich, Sard, Bailey Dell, Aaron Hall, Brayshaw and Redmond, all linked in there together. I had a bit of a chat to Ben about this. I think Bailey Dell from the Doggies is the best option, just because Caleb Daniel out for 4 weeks and he's as safe as houses. Has that halfback role sewn up. His standard deviation is really low, doesn't go under 80, doesn't go too high, but you know what you're getting. You're going to get that 105, 110 player. And he's got in the last couple of years, his injury history's been pretty good. Before that, not as much, but yeah, he's been pretty safe. For the points on field, Aaron Hall saving you 54k is definitely the number one option for points on field. The problem with Aaron is how long will those hammies hold up? He's already had 2 soft tissue injuries this year. Was an absolute killer at the Dogs game when he got 71 and was flying at halftime, and then went off injured. And that's the problem. Can he put 8 games together? If he puts 8 games together, there's potential there he'll go better than Dawson. North are going to see so much ball in that back line. He calls for it like an absolute seagull. If I knew he could play 8 games straight, he'd be an absolute lock. I'm still tempted to do it, but then there's that worry that, okay, what do I do when he gets injured? If he gets injured, I should say, but yeah, it feels like a when. Mitch did say on Twitter today, what happens if Noble does get sacked with Jeff Walsh coming in, and is there a potential that Goldie and Hall sort of get pushed aside and they bring in some more youth? There's a bit of a good argument on Twitter about that today that he caused, which was great. I like the discussion, because Goldie and Hall are two of their better players. Why would they want to put, the Lambs to slaughter even more? But, when they're losing, when their best loss is, 8 goals in the last, 9-10 weeks, what difference kind of does it make if you're losing by 50 points or losing by 100 points and that? Do you try to just get games into players, or do you try to move them into a kind of different role, just to try to fast track the development of some of these kids? Does Noble do that anyway? So I thought it was a bit of a left field discussion. It was good, interesting thought there that what could potentially happen to North Melbourne. I think personally they probably stick with Noble to the end of the year and then they review, and that, it's a tough situation for him to be in because they've obviously turned over the list. North haven't really ever bottomed out for quite a while. Though for so many years there, they were sort of around the finals and that. Now that they've bottomed out, they've become a bit of an easy target, which is always going to happen. And this is one of the reasons why North didn't bottom out, because everybody knew with the idea of Tassie coming in, well, North's now down the bottom, let's ship them off. So, and then that's just a different discussion in itself. So yeah, if you've got trades up your sleeve in particular, Hall's the one. If you don't have the money to go up to Dawson, and even still, you might want to just back Hall in. Sard's a lot safer. Zach Williams still a few weeks out, so I don't mind his scoring potential if you want to save the 23k. Daniel Rich, as Benny Boy said last night, he's got those injury concerns. So, and how, what's the chance of him being rested coming up to final, especially if Brisbane kind of secure a top 2 spot? So that's always a risk there. Brayshaw's going really well, and so is Redmond. Redmond's taking that Ridley role. And there's so much ball down in the Essendon back line. He takes the kick in from that. So they're left field. I've got no problem with people going them. But I think, the Bailey Dell, Aaron Hall, Bailey for the safety, Hall for the scoring, and then Sard as the third option are your better options there. Dropping down, Liam Baker and Vlosten save you 75 and 80k. Vlosten's taken Short's role there, takes intercept marks, has kick-ins, does it all. Richmond have a pretty soft draw coming up with West Coast. No disrespect to the Suns because it's still a tough game, but we know the Suns have, been sort of that bottom 10 team for a while now. And then North Melbourne and the Tigers finish with Port Adelaide, who could be out of contention by the time they play them. And then Hawthorn and Essendon. So they do have some softer games on the run home. Baker's been playing up around the midfield. Prestia's out for the next couple, at least this week, possibly 2 weeks. Cochin's still out. So Baker getting up around the midfield's a great option too. He's been scoring so well for that last sort of 6, 7, 8 week period. So we've got enough data to show that, he can score really well, and he's a forward defender. So it does give you a little bit of flexibility, especially if you've got a DPP, dual position player, in there. I think it's DDP, the old wrestler, but DPP. And you can link him around, or gives you potential that you might be able to move Baker forward if, like if Stephen May becomes cheap, or you're in that situation where you might be able to get Stewart back with 4 weeks to go. So he is definitely a good option for flexibility, and if that 75k helps you to do something with it. And then of the really cheap options, Lloydie and Whitfield save you 99k, Pendle's 124 and Zorko 132. I don't like Lloyd as much, as because McInerney back, and I still think he can score well, but nowhere near like he used to Seagull. Lockie Whitfield just burnt me so many times, but definitely looks like they have his it definitely has his roll back, and the Giants have been scoring pretty well, but are out of contention. Do they start trying to change things up? Taranto back in, Hopper to come back in. Kind of what happens there, or does that mean the Giants actually play better footy and Whitfield gets the ball out on the outside better than what he was? Pendles is the one that I quite like, just because the Pies have got 4 really winnable games that will take them to 9 in a row, and he's their leader. And as Ben said, it's kind of follow me, boys. I'll show you what to do to get them cemented in finals. They've got a really tough last couple games, so they've got to be cemented into the 8 before those couple games come up. They could still win them, but they don't want to be leaving that to that last moment. So there's a big chance Pendles could get in that midfield, and even sit behind the ball and rack up points there. So to save 124k. I don't mind that one. And Zorka, just the injuries, the worry. I think he goes back in that midfield and does what he needs to do. There's rumours Lions, could be a late out tonight as well. But then how's that for next week and sort of how that fits in? Does he play a bit more forward when they're winning? Just to sort of get him through to the end of the season. So I've got a few questions there about Zorks. And then Stephen May, which Chris is big on, saves 165k at the moment, but the big thing with him, his break-even's 152. So even if he came out and scored sort of, what would that be, a 92, he'd drop another 27k for next week. So one that I wouldn't mind keeping the cash for and upgrading Weir to him. And then by dropping Stewart down and having a bit more flexibility in my defence, but then it doesn't make my flexibility good for my forward mids. If May was probably cheaper now, there's a world that I could take the risk and go Stewart down to May, but his scoring potential compared to the rest of the guys is he's probably going to score high 90s. But yeah, some of these other players, we're banking 105, 110. Dawson's case could be 120s. So how many points you want to give up to bring that loophole player in? Talking about the forwards, so Hobbs 333, Rosas 272, 61k difference there. So this is where your decision kind of comes in if you want that loophole guy, and I think a few others might have maybe your Paddy McCartans or other players in there. If you've got like Dacos still, fantastic. Obviously you can just keep him there in defence, but these are the two most relevant about being traded out. Excuse me, I'm still trying to get over this this illness that I've got at the moment. But so Rosas in particular, because he's cheaper, that's obviously you're going to need more money to get him up. So hopefully you've got something in the bank. And it's hard to answer for everybody on here because not knowing everybody's bank budget. Some people have $0, other people might have 200, 300,000. So it gives you a lot more flexibility on what you want to do. So there is a world where I think Stewart, just the Dawson, great, and that just gives me the points. And then do I look at trying to get Weir down, next week or the week after, and then Rosas up if I need to? The problem with that is what happens if Cripps or Laird pull out this week. Laird more than Cripps, I'm hearing. So kind of who covers it, and then that kind of changes my decision on everything. And then so we've got the forward options, and I was just going through it with the A-team league, which I think we're still ranked 4th or 5th overall. About different options that we could be bringing in this week. So there's quite a lot of value there, and then there's kind of some high-placed players and that. Now, some of these players aren't necessarily the ones that be jumping off the page, but we're talking about a guy who's going to be an F7 mid-9. So you want them for two things: to come in for possibly just the 1 week and be there to score for, say, be it Laird this week. Hopefully next week you got a full side, so they're not kind of required, and they kind of just play their role. Like hopefully they have their bad game that week, or they pop, and you want to kind of play that might able to pop off 1 week and go 120, 130, and then you might chuck one of your other forwards or mids on the bench that week and bank their score if you've got a loophole player, which a lot of us do at this time of year. So we've got I'll mention 2 meter Pete because his break even's -5, gone a couple double hundreds the last 2 weeks. Well, 100, not double 100, but 100 the last 2 weeks. And he's that forward ruck. It's a no for me, but he's surprisingly in 4%. A few people did jump on. Stringer at 376k is massive value. He has actually scored quite well his last 2 weeks. Obviously the Bombers had that really good win against St Kilda, and then unfortunately couldn't back it up against the Eagles. But we know what Stringer did on the run home last year. He's probably their most important player, and he just they put him in the midfield when they need him to win games, and he's got the ability to score goals. The Bombers don't have the easiest drill coming up the next sort of couple of weeks, and that they do have North Melbourne in there at one point, but I don't think that matters so much for Stringer. But yeah, his last 2 have been 101 and 98. So 376 is a cheaper option if you really needed to go there, but he's probably not the kind of guy that's going to pop off for 1 week. Jackson, the problem is how long until Gawn's back. There's rumours Gawn could be back next week, and there's also the possibility that Jackson pulls out this week. So those who jumped on last week, fantastic for that 120, but what happens to him going forward? Zach Bailey at 399 is one I really do like. It's a bit left field, but he's such an absolute talent for the Lions. He's that sort of forward mid in that Degoe, Shai Bolton kind of mould, who can get forward, kick 2, 3, 4 on any given night, still rack up his sort of 20 possessions and have an influence on the game. And because of that, you do have the quiet games. The 22 against Hawthorn, the 46 against the Swannies, the 51 against Geelong. But as a guy, as a loophole player, you want somebody, as we said, who could pop off in any week, and he's gone the 129. He's had a 135, 115. So he not the most reliable. If you were kind of needing him to play every week to cover people, but if you wanted somebody that you could loophole, and the Dogs, he could come back tonight and actually score well if they let him off the chain. The Bombers the following week, the Giants, the Suns. The Lions always smash the Suns in the Q Clash. There's some games there that he could possibly get his 2, 3, 4 goals and get 20 odd possessions and score really well. So I don't mind it for 400k because that excuse me, especially if you've got, say, Hobbs and it's only 70k to go up him, and hypothetically, if we're saying you've got no money for Stewart, well, Stewart at his price at 562, you take 70k off him, and that's down to the 490 options, which is sort of your Baker, your Vlosten, or if you wanted to go further, that Lloyd, Whitfield, Pendle, Zorko group. And then, for Hobbs, it's just straight up there, and you end up getting, a Baker and a Zach Bailey type. So, there's a possibility there. And if you have, and for some reason I'm getting one of those friggin' annoying phone calls, probably solar panels or something. The great thing there, if you were in the position where, say, you had 30k in the bank, then instead of Baker, you might able to get up to your Aaron Hall. If you have a little bit more, you might able to get up to your Bailey Dell. So you could still get a decent defender, and a Zach Bailey is in that position could be quite handy. Other ones, Shai Bolton also in that 402 with no press yet, definitely this week, possibly next week, and Cochin out injured. Does share his time with Dusty. I do prefer him more than Dusty. I think Dusty's, as much as a gunplay as he's been, has kind of just goes in that middle when the Tigers need to win. But the Tigers do have some soft games: West Coast, North Melbourne, and as we said, Hawthorn Essendon in particular. Bolton does have the ability to go big, doesn't do it as much anymore, but he seems to be more that sort of 70 guy in the poor performances, but then he does pop up and can go 100, can go, as I said, the 140 against West Coast last time, so he does have the ability to go big. Not as good as some of those other options, but he's if you wanted somebody there as who could pop off on any given week, he's a potential. Sidey at 406k. He's been going hundreds of the last, I think, 3 out of their last 4 games in their wins. He's been running down that wing, just doing whatever he wants. And we know what Sidebottom's done that for a long time. Sidey's one of my favourite players in the league, so there's a little bit of bias there. But since the Freo game, he's got 80, 103, 105, the 51 against the D's, and 101 against the Giants. So pretty consistent there. And in those games, they've been winning. So they've got more winnable games coming up, so it's a definite option there if you wanted somebody who's just safer. And he's still got obviously the downside where he could put a lower game in, but he just seems to be that guy at the moment who's gets his 20 possessions, kicks a goal, and gets you 100. So if you want a safe backup, he could be a good one at 406k. Dylan Moore at 442, so we're now getting a little bit dearer. And by getting dearer, that means now, Whitfield or Pendlebury, Zorko, Stephen may become your options for Stewart unless you've got more money. So the further up we go up here with these mid forwards, the further down we've got to go to the defenders unless you've got cash in the bank. So they're just things to think of. Dylan Moore has started on House on Fire this year. He's been a real find for the Hawks. Came back with a 112 last week as well. But he started the year when he went 90, 103, 94, 105, 90. He threw the 147 against the D's. He's had the 101 against the Lions. Had a couple of poor weeks in there against the Tigers and the Suns. But it's bounced back 81, 92 and 112 the last 3 weeks at 442. And with the fact that they've got to play the Giants, Adelaide, West Coast, North next 4, and he's a goal-kicking half forward. So if you wanted somebody really left field, 2% of teams, that could be that F7 that you could loophole in any given week. He is definitely one to consider. But again, 442, how much money does that leave you for that sort of Stewart downgrade? But I do like the idea of Dylan Moore. Finlayson, 444. I believe Lysa could be back as early as next week, so that's a no. Tommy Hawkins, 445. I think those monster scores are gone, especially these days with Jeremy Cameron. But he's still got the ability to obviously kick bags, especially down at Geelong. They're playing North this week. I think he still probably goes 100 this week. They've got the West Coast in the last game. And then you've got the main 4. And these are the 4 boys we were kind of focusing on the other day, which is your Rosie, Heaney, Taranto, and who else? And Duncan. And so these guys are definitely the most relevant. But again, we went through the other guys just because of their price. So you got Rosie at 462, and then we go through Duncan at 459, Heaney at 459. And Taranto's that little bit more cheaper at 435, 436. I know Benny Boy's more keen on Taranto. I'm just a little bit worried about the role and how he fits in. Does he play a bit more forward coming back into the side? We know his potential in the midfield, but with Tommy Green already in there, continuing to get as many games into him. Kelly's just a superstar. Cox has been playing so well in there. Yeah, it's a tough one to see where does he fit back in, and last week, I know it was his first game back, but the 56 doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence. As I said, Dusty's at 441, but that's a no for me. But yeah, the other 3, Heaney, 59 last week, does that every game against St Kilda. He's got a really poor form against the Saints, but we know what Heaney can do. He started the year 141, 140, 88, 131, 112. So we talk about those players that can go big on any given week. That is Heaney. But he does have the potential to go 50s, and we've seen that all through his career. Had the 53 against the Tigers, the 59 against the Saints, but at 459, he's absolutely fantastic value. They play the Bombers this week. I think last time against the Bombers was only a 92, but if he kicks a few goals, he's got the potential to go big again. They do have the Crows North coming up, so that's a pretty reasonable draw. Mitchie Duncan's the other one. We know what Duncan's able to do. He's sort of a couple games back there, 90 and 75. Did have the 117 against the Doggies. Actually, he ended up playing surprisingly most of the year. It just in my mind, it feels like Duncan hasn't been there most of the year. But yeah, you're looking through it, and like he had the 47 against Freo. There was a 67 against the Lions. So there's been some poor games there, but he still had a few tons. I think the real potential of him is what does he go back into that back line and kind of take a bit more of Stewart's role. The problem is we don't have enough data to know if that's what's going to do. But with North Melbourne, West Coast still to come, the Saints down at Geelong, so they've got the potential there to have some big scoring games, and we know the Cats can rack up the ball. He's not a bad one, but there's a lot more risk with probably Duncan than there is Heaney. But if he does get that role behind the ball, and you got your DeConnings and Blitzarves, even maybe Henry going back and taking the marks and then offloading to Duncan. He obviously a very good kick. So yeah, potential to be a really good player there. Rosie has been fantastic. What was the stat today? Since round 6, he's second in the coaches' votes. So since sort of the Carlton game where they were getting pumped and they came back, he got a 91, then went 153, 87, 74, 116, had the 46 against the Cats, which, standard, and then 106, 76, 103, and 113. So this kid is absolutely on fire. Reminds me a lot of Robbie Gray. Plays up forward, can go into the midfield, change the game. The problem is Port's draw the next few weeks. Freo, they got Melbourne, Geelong in there, Collingwood, the Tigers. But they do finish off with Western Adelaide. Interesting, the showdown's the last game of the might be the last game of the year. But yeah, it's a guy who's, again, we talk about consistent. He's pretty consistent for what he's doing. So yeah, they're all options. And then you obviously have the high expensive. We can talk about your Jeremy Cameras, Tom Lynch's, Todd Goldsteins further up, depending on who you have. But I think there's more the minority who have 200, 300,000 lying around to upgrade a Hobbs or Rosas and still able to turn Stewart into a decent player. So, yeah, just some food for thought, because I know that's been on everyone's mind, and scrolling through Twitter, a lot of the other Supercoach, I guess, people who just discuss Supercoach and have put it out there going, okay, what are you doing this week? A, with Stewart, and B, have you thought about your loophole option? And that's going to be a real big one if one of these players pulls out late. I know a few people have said, I'm just going to have to go with Clark or Rioli. I hope one of these, players on the bench play. But I would much prefer one of these other mid-price guys to come in any week, and hopefully they, as we said, just pop off one week. So a bit of food for thought there. But yeah, just to recap, Stewart down, Stewart up to Dawson if you can as the number one option, and then either Sick Dog or Doc. If you need to go down, if you want safety, Bailey Dell. If you want points on field, Aaron Hall. But please have trades up your sleeve, because that could just turn to disaster. Or if you want cheaper options, you're kind of looking at your Floston Baker, or going down to Pendles, or even Stephen May, especially if you want to defend a backup. If there's a world where you could bring in, say, maybe Baker as a forward, but play him in the defence this week, move him forward, and then bring in Stephen May, but by holding, and then hold Stewart. There's some funky things that could happen there. And then it comes down again, where are you at and what are you playing for? We know about Dawson's draw. If you're up near the top, you're probably wanting Dawson just to stay with those top-ranked players. Also have a look at your home and away matchups for those who just play leagues, and kind of see where you are on the ladder, and if you're entrenched in the finals, what kind of your matchups might be, and then have a look at those Supercoach finals. I know, the Crows, there's a couple other teams out there have really soft finals draws. And that's it for me today. So all good luck with your super coaching over the weekend, and we'll talk soon. Bye.